Have you ever witnessed a mother strike her own daughter in front of 200 guests at a family wedding? No. So let me take you inside the worst and most important night of my life. You are at your younger sister's wedding in one of the most prestigious hotels in the city. Guests include federal judges, senior attorneys, and the kind of old money families whose names appear on hospital wings and university buildings, and your mother has just walked up to you on stage in front of every single one of them and placed a thick stack of legal documents in your hands demanding you sign over your $2 million apartment as a wedding gift for your sister. You say no, and her hand connects with your face so hard that the earring your grandmother gave you on your 30th birthday flies off and skips across the marble floor like a small silver coin. That was not a story, that was my life. On the 14th of March 2024, they expected tears, they expected an apology, they expected me to collapse like I always had. Instead, I bent down, picked up my earring, walked off that stage, and made one phone call. 60 minutes later, a woman walked through the ballroom doors, and when my mother turned and saw who it was, she began screaming because the person she had spent 3 years telling everyone was confused and incapable had just arrived with a lawyer and a briefcase full of proof that changed everything. Before I go further, if this story is already hitting something deep inside you, please stay with me until the end, because this is not just about a wedding or an apartment. This is about what happens when silence finally runs out. Now let me take you back 3 years to where it all began. The call came on a Tuesday evening in March 2021. I was in my small apartment in the northern part of the city eating leftover takeout noodles and reviewing renovation sketches for a client's kitchen when the name on my phone screen stopped me cold. It was my grandmother, Nora Whitfield, calling, and Nora Whitfield did not make unnecessary phone calls. She had spent 31 years as a professor at one of the country's most respected law schools, and she treated words the way most people treat money. She did not waste them. Sweetheart, she said, her voice as steady and precise as it had always been. I need to tell you something, and I need you to pay attention. She told me she was finalizing her will and that she was leaving me the waterfront apartment at Harborview Terrace, the one she had purchased 8 years earlier for just under $2 million and now valued at more than $2.1 million. She told me her longtime attorney Samuel Reeve had already prepared the paperwork and everything would be finalized within weeks. I set down my chopsticks. Why me? I asked. She was quiet for a moment and then she said, because you are the only one who shows up. You have been coming every Sunday for 10 years. Annabelle, you bring white tulips because you remember. They are my favorite. You sit with me when I have nothing worth saying, while your mother sends cards at Christmas and your sister sends nothing at all. I felt tears rise in my throat before I could stop them. The paperwork will be done next month, she said calmly. Samuel has everything in order. And then she paused and added, your mother will not be happy with this. That turned out to be the most significant understatement anyone has ever made to me. The news spread through our family within weeks. I never found out exactly how Boston's legal community is smaller than most people imagine, and Nora had deep roots in it. By April of 2021, my mother had organized what she called a family conversation at her home in the older part of the city. When I arrived, I found my father Gerald seated in his leather armchair, my mother Sylvia arranged elegantly on the sofa, and my younger sister Cassandra perched on the arm of a chair like a woman performing the role of someone who had been wronged. They had positioned themselves like a committee and I was the subject under review. Annabelle, my mother began, her voice carrying that specific kind of warmth that has nothing warm inside it. We need to have an honest conversation about your grandmother's state of mind. Her state of mind. I sat down on the only remaining seat, a straight-backed chair facing all three of them. She seems perfectly fine to me. She is clearly not thinking clearly, Sylvia said, smoothing her jacket. Leaving a property of that value to a single grandchild while excluding the rest of the family is not the behavior of someone in full command of their faculties. She is not excluding anyone, I said. She is giving something she owns to someone she wants to have it. That is entirely within her rights. My sister let out a small sound that was carefully constructed to sound like a wounded sob. I have always loved Grandma, she said. I simply do not have time to visit as often as Annabelle does. I have a career to manage. I have a relationship. I have a life. My father spoke then in that measured tone he had cultivated over 30 years of practicing law. The sensible resolution, he said, would be for you to decline the inheritance, or at the very least agree to sell the property and divide the proceeds equally among the family. I looked at him. Gerald Whitmore Harrison, who had not once asked me a meaningful question about my life in years, who had missed my college graduation because of a golf commitment, and who was now sitting across from me explaining what fairness required. I am not declining anything, I said, and I am not selling anything. Grandmother made this decision because she chose to. If you have concerns, you should bring them to her. The room went cold. Sylvia's carefully maintained smile disappeared, and then I hope you understand that your selfishness has consequences, she said very quietly. The consequences arrived immediately. By the summer of 2021 I had been quietly removed from every family group message. I learned about my sister's engagement party through a photograph posted online, a picture of Cassandra surrounded by cousins and family friends, champagne glasses lifted at a waterfront venue. The caption read, "Future Mrs. Harrington," with a row of diamond rings underneath. No one had told me, no one had thought to invite me. When I eventually asked my mother about it, she told me breezily that they had simply assumed I would not want to come given how busy I was with my little decorating hobby. My little decorating hobby was a licensed interior design studio with 14 active clients and revenue that had more than doubled in the past 18 months. But to Sylvia, anything that did not involve a law degree or a wealthy husband barely counted as work. The exclusion itself was painful, but it was not the worst part. The worst part was the story my mother began telling anyone who would listen. I overheard it once at a neighborhood gathering. "Nora is not well," she said to a woman in a cream blazer. "Annabelle has been visiting constantly, running the woman against her own family. You know how impressionable elderly people can be." She positioned me as a predator, a calculated opportunist who had manipulated a confused old woman into signing over property. She told this story to attorneys, to social acquaintances, to anyone who might one day become a client of mine, and through all of it, I said nothing. I made no public statements. I corrected no one. I believed that if I stayed quiet and kept my head down, the story would run out of air. I did not yet understand that my silence was fuel. What I also did not fully understand was why Nora had moved into a luxury residential care facility called Greenfield Manor in late 2021. She told me she wanted tranquility. She told me the drama had exhausted her, but sometimes when I visited her on Sunday afternoons, I would catch a flicker in her eyes, something that looked less like peace and more like watchfulness. "Nora," I asked her once, "did something happen between you and my mother?" She looked toward the window where the manicured garden sat still in the afternoon light. "Some things are better left alone for now," she said finally. I let it go. I should not have. 3 years would pass before I understood what she was protecting and why she had chosen to protect it in silence. In December of 2023, 3 months before the wedding that would reshape my entire life, I was in my studio reviewing fabric samples for a renovation project when the afternoon mail arrived. Among the usual envelopes was one made of heavy cream paper, my name written across the front in careful calligraphy. Inside was an invitation to my sister's wedding to be held on the 14th of March 2024 at the Grand Ashford Hotel. Black tie, 200 guests. After 2 years of being treated as though I did not exist, after being left out of every holiday gathering, every milestone, every casual family moment, they were inviting me to the wedding. That same evening my mother's voice appeared in my ear for the first time in months. "Annabelle, darling," she said, warm in the way that she always was when she wanted something, "did you receive Cassandra's invitation?" "Yes," I said. "Wonderful." Victoria said, "This wedding is going to be such a healing moment for all of us, a chance for the family to show everyone that we stand together." She paused the way someone does when they are approaching the actual point. "I have been thinking," she continued, "there it was about the apartment. This would be the perfect moment for you to transfer the property to Cassandra and Tyler as a wedding gift. Think of what a beautiful gesture that would be. Think of how proud your grandmother would be to see you put family first." I could not speak for a moment. The audacity of invoking Nora, the woman who had specifically chosen to give me that apartment, as an argument for why I should give it away was almost impressive. "Mom, the apartment belongs to me. Grandmother left it to me, and that has not changed." "Nothing has to change, sweetheart. All you would need to do is sign the transfer documents before the ceremony. Think of Cassandra. Think of how much she and Tyler need a proper home to begin their life, and then Tyler's family can provide one." I said. Silence stretched between us. When Sylvia spoke again, every trace of warmth was gone. "I expect you to reflect seriously on this before the wedding," she said, "and I expect you to make the right choice." She ended the call. I spent the following weeks debating whether to go at all. I understood clearly what would happen if I attended and refused publicly in front of 200 members of Boston's legal and social elite. Sylvia would make sure I was remembered as the daughter who poisoned her sister's wedding day with selfishness and bitterness. My business depended heavily on word of mouth in precisely those circles. If I did not attend, that would be its own kind of defeat, a confirmation of every story she had been telling about me. I decided to go. I had done nothing wrong, and I would not hide as though I had. 1 week before the wedding, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. "Nora, sweetheart," she said, speaking in the tone she used only when something mattered deeply, "I need you to write something down." I grabbed a pen. "If anything happens at that wedding, and I believe something will call Samuel Reeve immediately. His number is available through his firm. His assistant knows your name. Nora, what are you talking about? What is going to happen? Your mother believes I am unaware of what she is planning. She forgets that I spent 3 decades teaching people how to think about the law. Nora's voice was level, but I could hear the steel underneath. I have prepared everything. Samuel has all the documents. If you need them, they are ready. What documents, Nora? I asked. Just remember to call him, she said, and remember, whatever happens, that I love you. She ended the call before I could ask anything else. I saved the attorney's number in my phone, not understanding why my hands were trembling. The 14th of March 2024. The Grand Ashford Hotel rose above the center of the city like something assembled to make ordinary people feel small. I had walked past it hundreds of times in my life, but walking through its main entrance that evening felt entirely different. It felt like walking into territory that had been carefully arranged against me. The ballroom was extraordinary. White orchids cascaded from chandeliers above a room set with round tables dressed in ivory linen. A 12-piece ensemble played softly in the corner. Waiters moved through the crowd with champagne and delicate canapes on silver trays. Every detail had Sylvia's fingerprints on it. 198 guests I had counted: attorneys, judges, investment partners, and the kind of inherited wealth families whose surnames appear on institution buildings. These were the people my mother had spent 3 decades performing for her chosen audience, her witnesses. I wore a deep navy dress that I had selected after hours of deliberation, knowing that anything too expensive would be called showing off and anything too plain would embarrass the family. In the end, I chose something that simply felt like me. My father Gerald found me near the ice sculpture 10 minutes after I arrived. We stood in silence for a moment. There was nothing to say. Cassandra appeared in a cloud of white fabric and crystal embellishments, arms extended toward me in a hug that barely touched. You came, she said, smiling perfectly. Of course, I said. You are my sister. She stepped back and her eyes shifted. Did you bring the documents, Annabelle? What documents? The transfer paperwork, she said, her voice breezy and light. For the apartment. Mom said you would have it ready, Cassandra. They already expected me to comply. The invitation, the phone call, the reconciliation that had never been real. It was all a stage built for a single moment. There are no transfer documents, I said. The apartment is mine. I am not signing anything. Not today, not ever. Her smile fractured. She looked for a moment exactly like our mother. You know Tyler, and I already told people we would not need his condo in the other part of the city, she said. We already told our realtor. We already told the whole family. You told people about a property that has never belonged to you. I said. You do not need it, she said more sharply, her voice beginning to rise. You live in that small place north of the city. You do not host anyone. You do not have anyone to impress. The point, I said quietly, is that grandmother wanted me to have it, and her wishes matter more than your plans. She stared at me for a moment and then leaned in very close. When Mom handles this, she said, do not say you were not warned. She swept away, and I stood alone near the ice sculpture watching it slowly melt. At 7:30 in the evening, after the dinner had been cleared and the toasts had been delivered, the sound of a champagne flute being struck with a knife cut through the room. My mother rose from the head table dressed in a gown that had clearly cost more than most people's monthly income and lifted a microphone with the ease of someone who had been performing in rooms like this for decades. If I could have everyone's attention, she said, I would like to take a moment for something very special. A family tradition that Cassandra has asked me to share. The first warning registered at the base of my spine as a kind of cold pressure. As many of you know, she continued, the Harrison Whitmore family believes in standing together, in being generous, in supporting one another even when it requires sacrifice, and tonight in that spirit I would like to invite my eldest daughter Annabelle to join me up here. 198 pairs of eyes turned toward my table. If I refused, I would be the difficult one, the bitter one, the sister who could not put her grudge aside for a single evening. I stood. I walked through the maze of tables up to the raised platform where my mother stood and felt her arm come around my shoulders in a gesture that looked like affection and felt like a trap. Now, as many of you know, she said, Annabella's grandmother left her a beautiful waterfront apartment valued at just over $2 million. It is a remarkable inheritance and Annabelle has been holding on to it. While the family waits for the right moment to make something meaningful of it, she produced a folder from somewhere. I had not seen her holding it and opened it to reveal a document with my name already printed in the signature lines. A deed transfer quick claim agreement, all prepared in advance. All Annabelle needs to do is sign, and this extraordinary gift will give Cassandra and Tyler the home they deserve as they begin their life together. The room actually applauded. Mom, I said, my voice quiet, and even I am not signing this. Do not be nervous, sweetheart, she said, gesturing toward the documents. It is only paperwork. It is not only paperwork, I said. It is the apartment grandmother left to me specifically not to Cassandra, not to the family, to me. The applause faded. Page. Sylvia's grip on my shoulder tightened and her voice dropped slightly, though the microphone still carried every word. Let us not make this into something difficult. I am not making it anything, I said. I am telling you no. Cassandra appeared at the edge of the stage, her expression perfectly arranged into the look of a wounded bride. Really, she said quietly but loud enough, you are going to do this today? Cassandra, I did not ask to be called up here. I did not agree to any of this. You all made this decision without asking me because we knew you would choose that apartment over your family, she said, her voice beginning to rise. The apartment that your grandmother left to me, I said, and not to you. Tyler's father coughed. Somewhere in the back of the room, a waiter near the kitchen doors stood frozen. Sylvia's composure broke, her voice rose, and the microphone amplified every syllable. You ungrateful child, after everything this family has sacrificed for you, after we raised you and supported you and built everything around you, you cannot do this one thing. You did not support my business, I said, and you did not raise me. Grandmother raised me every summer while you were at conferences and galas and anywhere else you would rather have been. The penthouse belongs to me because I was there, because I showed up, because I cared, and no amount of public humiliation is going to change that. Her hand moved before I saw it coming. The impact of the slap snapped my head sideways, and my earring, the small silver one Nora had given me for my 30th birthday, flew off my ear and struck the marble with a sound like a bell. The room went absolutely silent. I stood completely still for one full breath. My cheek burned, my vision tilted. I could feel every person in that ballroom watching to see what I would do. What I did was breathe. I bent down. I picked up the earring from the marble floor. I straightened the small bent hinge methodically and put it back on my ear. Then I looked at my mother. That is the last time you touch me, I said. My voice did not shake. I turned and walked off the stage, through the tables, past the silence and the stairs, past the jazz ensemble that had stopped playing, out the double doors of the ballroom and into the lobby. I did not run, I did not cry. I found a corner near the concierge desk, pulled out my phone and dialed the number I had saved a week earlier. It rang once and a professional voice answered. Samuel Reeves' office. This is Annabelle Whitmore, I said, my voice calm and clear. Please tell my grandmother that the documents are needed. She will be there within the hour, the assistant replied. I sat down on a velvet bench, touched my stinging cheek and waited. 60 minutes, that was all I needed. 60 minutes and everything was about to change. At 8:45 that evening, the main doors of the Grand Ashford Hotel opened and my grandmother walked in. Nora Whitfield was 78 years old. She moved with a cane, now her steps slower than in the years when I had watched her command lecture halls with nothing but her voice and her presence, but everything else about her was unchanged. She wore a gray cashmere coat over a simple dark dress, her silver hair pinned back and her eyes carrying the same precision I had seen in them since childhood. Beside her walked Samuel Reeve, mid-40s, in a charcoal suit, carrying a briefcase with the quiet authority of someone who had spent decades in courtrooms. Nora, I stood from the bench and my composure gave way entirely. You came. She crossed the lobby and took my face in both her hands, looking at my cheek without saying a word. She kissed my forehead gently, the way she had when I was 7 and had fallen in the garden. Then, let us finish this, she said. We walked into the ballroom together. The evening was in pieces. Clusters of guests stood in small groups, their champagne untouched, their conversations hushed. Cassandra was actually crying this time, not performed grief, but something real. Tyler and his parents stood nearby, looking like people who had made an investment they were now reconsidering. Sylvia stood near the head table, gesturing at Gerald, who appeared to be attempting to contain what could not be contained. No one noticed us immediately. Then someone near the back gasped, and then another. Then Sylvia turned and saw her mother walking across the marble floor toward her. The color drained from my mother's face. Mom, she said, and the word came out like something breaking. What are you doing here? I am here for my granddaughter's wedding, Nora said, her voice carrying across the entire silent room. I was not invited, of course, but I decided to come anyway. I hope Cassandra does not mind. She turned to face the assembled guests, 198 people, many of them attorneys and judges who understood exactly what was happening. My name is Nora Whitfield, she said. I spent 31 years as a professor of law at one of this country's most respected institutions. I am of sound mind, and I am here today to confirm what has apparently been disputed. The apartment at Harborview Terrace was left to my granddaughter Annabelle Whitmore in my will dated the 19th of June 2019. That will is legal, validly executed, and fully enforceable. There are no competing claims to that property. Samuel Reeve opened his briefcase and withdrew a document. This is a certified copy of Mrs. Whitfield's will, he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had stood before many judges in his career, notarized and registered with the county probate court. I can attest to its full authenticity as her attorney of 23 years. Sylvia stepped forward. "This is absurd," she said, her voice rising. "You are confused, mother. You do not understand what you are saying." "I understand perfectly," Nora replied, "and I have for some time." She nodded at Samuel, who withdrew a second set of papers. "These are transaction records for a property in the coastal region," she continued. "A property deeded in my name until the 15th of September 2020, when it was sold for $875,000. I did not sell that property. I was hospitalized for 6 weeks that autumn recovering from a fractured hip. I signed nothing. I authorized nothing." Samuel produced a third document. "This is an independent forensic analysis from a certified document examination firm," he said. "They examined the signature on the sale agreement against verified samples of Mrs. Whitfield's authentic handwriting. Their conclusion is that the signature is inconsistent with her genuine hand. The probability of forgery, according to their report, is 98.7%. The sound that moved through the ballroom was unlike anything I have ever heard. It was not loud. It was the specific silence of 200 people simultaneously understanding something they cannot take back. "You are lying," Sylvia's voice cracked. "This is fabricated. You are confused, mother. You do not know what you are talking about." "I am sharp enough to hire experts," Nora said. "I am sharp enough to preserve documentation, and I was sharp enough to forward this entire file to the district attorney's office 7 days ago." My mother went the color of old paper. "You what?" she whispered. "Fraudulent transfer of title," Nora said, her voice almost gentle, the way a former professor might explain something difficult to a struggling student. "Carries penalties of up to 5 years under the laws of this state." I did not want to believe my own daughter was capable of this. "I gave you 3 years to come to me and tell the truth. Instead, you spent those years calling my granddaughter a manipulator, calling me confused, trying to take from Annabelle what you could not take from me through honest means." Sylvia spun toward Gerald. "Say something," she said, her voice fracturing. "Completely stop this." Gerald took one deliberate step backward. "I did not know," he said quietly. "I did not know about the property." "You signed the transfer documents," she said, shrieking. "You were there." "I signed what you placed in front of me," Gerald replied. "I did not know what it was." The room watched in stunned silence as 3 decades of a marriage came apart in real time in the middle of a wedding reception in front of everyone Sylvia had ever tried to impress. Cassandra finally spoke, and her voice was small and completely without performance. "Mom," she said, "what is grandmother talking about?" Sylvia said nothing. She stood in the center of the evening she had spent months constructing and had nothing left to offer. Nora turned to me. Her eyes were tired and sad, but entirely clear. "Annabelle," she said, "I am sorry that you had to learn all of this way. I am sorry I waited as long as I did." "It is all right, Nora." I took her hand. "It is all right now." She held my fingers for a moment, then she looked at Sylvia one final time. "You lost me the day I discovered what you had done," she said. "Tonight everyone else simply had the opportunity to learn the truth. I hope someday you find it in yourself to face what you have done, but I have stopped waiting for that." She turned and I walked beside her as we left. Behind us I heard Sylvia's voice rise into something beyond words. I heard Tyler's father say something brief and final to Cassandra. I heard the room erupt into conversation, but I did not look back, not even once. We reached the lobby before Tyler's footsteps caught up with us. I heard the sharp click of his shoes on the marble and turned expecting anger. What I saw instead was a kind of calculating desperation. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said, addressing my grandmother entirely as though I were not standing directly beside her, "I think we should speak privately. There may be some miscommunication that a quiet conversation could resolve." Nora looked at him the way she must have looked at students who had clearly not done the assigned reading. "There is no miscommunication, Mr. Harrington. Surely the situation with the coastal property is something that can be addressed within the family," he said quietly. "Families have complicated moments with paperwork." "The document was forged," Nora replied. "My daughter committed fraud. Those are not complicated family moments, they are crimes." Tyler shifted and I saw the composure slip entirely beneath the polished surface. "And the apartment," he said, his voice lower. "I understand you may be reconsidering certain arrangements given how things have developed. Perhaps there is room to discuss Cassandra's position." Mr. Harrington, Nora's voice was like surgical steel. "I am not reconsidering anything. The apartment belongs to Annabelle. It will remain Annabelle-less. And if you are asking whether I will redirect any portion of my estate toward a granddaughter who just married a man willing to approach me in a hotel lobby with this particular conversation, the answer is no." Tyler went red. Samuel stepped forward quietly and suggested that Tyler return to the reception and that anything he chose to say further might be relevant to ongoing legal proceedings. Tyler Harrington, whose father was a senior partner at one of the city's most established firms, looked suddenly like someone who understood exactly how exposed he was. He left without another word. We walked out into the cold night air. The city was lit around us, and the sky carried the first suggestion of rain that would come later. I stood on the pavement and for the first time in 3 years felt like I could simply breathe. "What happens to her now?" I asked, meaning Sylvia. "The district attorney's office will conduct their investigation," Samuel said. "The documentation is substantial. Whether formal charges are pursued will depend on their findings, but the evidence is compelling." Nora looked at me for a moment and then said quietly, "I do not want you to spend any of your energy on anger, Annabelle. There is too much worth building ahead of you." The town car Samuel had arranged pulled up to the curb. Nora began to step toward it, then stopped and turned back. "I want you to come tomorrow," she said, her voice soft and slightly tired. "We have a great deal to talk about, and I want to hear about your work, the real version, not the polished one you give me when you think I need protecting." "I will be there," I said. She hugged me before getting into the car, a real hug, the kind that does not perform anything. She held on, and so did I. "I love you, my girl," she said. "I love you too, Nora." I stood on the pavement and watched the car move away into the Boston night. My phone buzzed. A message from a journalist friend named Daniel who wrote investigative pieces for one of the city's major papers. "Just saw a legal beat reporter post something cryptic about a prominent family in the city. Was that you?" I typed back, "I will tell you everything later." A second message came from a number I did not recognize. "Annabelle, this is Patricia Jenner from a law firm you may know of. We were at the wedding tonight. I owe you an apology. I believed things I had no business believing. Watching what happened and the way you handled yourself made me genuinely ashamed. If you are ever interested in discussing a design project for our offices, please feel free to reach out. I understand if you are not, but the offer is sincere." I saved the number and put my phone away. Then I pulled my coat tighter against the cold and walked toward where I had parked my car. For the first time in a very long time, I was not carrying anything that did not belong to me. The consequences unfolded over the weeks that followed. 2 weeks after the wedding, Sylvia was asked to come in for a formal interview with the district attorney's office regarding the fraudulent property sale. The meeting lasted nearly 4 hours. When she emerged, according to what Samuel later told me, she had aged visibly. Her attorney, a colleague from her social circle, withdrew from the case shortly after, citing a conflict of interest. The actual reason, according to people who knew them both, was that he had reviewed the evidence and wanted no association with a case that had already been decided by the weight of documentation. Gerald checked into a hotel on the 28th of March. He released a brief statement through a mutual acquaintance saying he was seeking space and had no prior knowledge of any improper transactions. Whether anyone believed him was an open question. His signature appeared on the documents alongside Sylvia's, and 30 years of quiet compliance had used up most of the goodwill that might otherwise have been extended to him. Cassandra and Tyler postponed their honeymoon indefinitely. Tyler's parents had concerns they wanted addressed before the couple traveled internationally. The dream of the waterfront apartment was finished. Sylvia received a letter from the charitable organization whose annual gala she had co-chaired for 17 years, informing her that her participation was under review pending the resolution of ongoing legal matters. Translation: she had been removed. The Bar Association opened an ethics inquiry after 2 attorneys who had been present at the wedding filed formal complaints. The complaints did not allege anything Sylvia had done to those specific individuals. They cited conduct unbecoming. A brief item appeared in the legal section of a major city paper. A Boston area attorney is under investigation for alleged document fraud in connection with a real estate transaction. The district attorney's office confirmed the investigation is active. No names appeared in the print version, but in a professional community as closely connected as the one my mother had spent her career cultivating, no names were needed. I received 11 messages that week from people I had not spoken to in years. Some were apologies, some were expressions of support, a few were clearly looking for details I did not provide. The one that mattered most came from Patricia Jenner, who followed her initial text with a formal email. She wrote that she wanted to begin by apologizing properly. She explained that for years she had believed things Sylvia had told her, and that watching what actually happened at the wedding, watching the calm and dignity with which I had handled something genuinely terrible had made her ashamed of how little she had questioned. She said she did not expect forgiveness, but she wanted to offer something real. Her firm's conference floor was being redesigned, and they were looking for an interior designer who understood professionalism, discretion, and quality. If I was interested, she would like to speak further. I sat with that email for 3 days. Part of me wanted to decline anything connected to the world my mother had moved through so successfully for so long, but Patricia was not my mother. She was someone who had been lied to, who had eventually recognized the lie, and who was trying to make something of that recognition. I took the meeting. The project was the largest I had ever been offered, a full redesign of 2 conference rooms and a main reception area. Budget $82,000. Timeline 3 months. By May I had received 2 more inquiries from attorneys who had been present at the wedding. Word was moving not only about what had happened to Sylvia, but about my work. People who had dismissed me as a Harrison with a decorating hobby were becoming curious about the person who had stood calmly on a stage while her mother tried to take everything from her and then walked away without breaking. I was careful. I vetted every inquiry. I turned down one project from someone who seemed less interested in design than in information about the case, but gradually something was shifting, not just my business, my understanding of who I actually was. The strangest development came in early May. Samuel contacted me to explain that the original sale of Nora's coastal property was under formal legal review and that the buyers had been notified of a potential defect in the title if the original transaction was ultimately voided due to fraud. The situation would become complicated for everyone involved. It could take years, but the process had begun. In June of 2024, 3 months after the wedding, I am sitting on the balcony of my apartment watching the last of the evening light fall across the harbor. The sky is orange and soft at the edges, and the water holds it all in reflection. It is the kind of evening that has always been Nora's favorite, and Nora is here. She comes every Sunday now. I collect her from Greenfield Manor in the morning, and we spend the day together. Sometimes we go to an exhibition, sometimes we just sit here and watch the light move. Today we have been talking about my father. He called me. I tell her 2 days ago he wanted to explain his position. He says he did not know about the coastal property. He says Sylvia handled everything, and he signed where she told him to sign. Nora looks at me carefully and asks whether I believe him. I think about it honestly. I believe he chose not to know. I finally say, I believe he has been making that choice for 30 years about a great many things. Nora nods slowly. And what did you tell him? I told him I needed time. I said I was not ready to see him yet. I told him that if he wanted a relationship with me, he would have to demonstrate it over time, not with explanations, not with apologies, but by simply and consistently showing up. She reaches across and takes my hand. That is a healthy position, sweetheart, she says. We sit in the quiet for a while. The harbor lights are beginning to come on one by one. Cassandra sent me a message last week. I add, I heard Nora says she wants to talk. She asked if I would call her. And will you? I look out at the water, at the boats returning slowly to their moorings. She knew. I say, not necessarily about the coastal property, but she was there every time our mother called me selfish. She heard every story. She never once questioned it. She never once said anything. That is true. If she wants a sister, she has to be willing to see who our mother actually is, and I do not think she is there yet. I do not think she wants to be, so I am not closing anything permanently, but I am not opening it either, not until she is ready to come through it honestly. Nora smiles, that small steady smile that has always meant she is proud of something. You have learned something important, Annabelle. She says something I wish I had understood at your age. What is that? That love without respect is not really love. She says it is just habit, and you deserve both. I started working with a therapist in April. Her name is Dr. Caroline Walsh, and she specializes in family systems and personal boundaries. Every week I sit in her office and talk about things I spent 32 years refusing to look at directly. It is hard. Some weeks it completely undoes me, but it is the most important thing I have done for myself in my entire life. There is also someone I should mention. His name is Marcus, and he is an architect I met at a professional conference in May. He has gentle eyes and no sense of direction whatsoever, and absolutely no knowledge of or interest in who the Whitmore family of this city might be. He likes me for my work, my laugh, my habit of speaking to the plants in my studio. It is slow and new, and it is the first time I have let someone in without first calculating what they might think of my family. My grandmother finishes her wine and sets the glass down gently on the table. You know, she says, I have been thinking about legacy. You have already given me a legacy, I say, and gesture at the apartment around us. Not the property. She shakes her head. I mean the other thing, the one that actually matters. I wait. I spent too many years keeping the peace, she says, staying quiet to preserve a relationship that was costing me everything, letting Sylvia become who she became because confronting her was too painful. She looks at me. I do not want that for you. I want you to speak the truth even when it is uncomfortable. I want you to protect yourself even when it feels like selfishness. I want you to know that being kind does not require you to be silent. I feel something rise in my throat. I will remember, I say. Good. She pats my hand. Now what is for dinner? All of this feeling has made me genuinely hungry. I laugh and the sound fills the evening air and goes out over the water. This is my life now, a home that is truly mine, a grandmother who has loved me without conditions, a business that is growing on its own terms, boundaries that I actually hold, a future I am building one honest choice at a time. If you are watching this and you are in a situation where your family expects you to sacrifice yourself for their peace, if you have been told that wanting things for yourself is a form of selfishness, if you are wondering whether you are allowed to want more, I want you to know that you are absolutely allowed. Being kind to yourself is not the opposite of being kind to others. It is the foundation that makes everything else possible. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story reminded you that you are worthy of respect, that saying no is not the same as being wrong, that truth is worth the discomfort of telling it, then it was worth sharing. Take care of yourself until next time.